Mama's 87, and patience is not her strong suit, and she's ready to go. She just said, I done preached. Oh, got something special in the house. Come on up, Stewie, if you want to. Stewie and I met and talked last week, and God sort of rocked him and challenged him at a foundational level. That's always a good thing. Do you know that? It is always a good thing when God shakes you at a foundational level, and I'm going to let him share how that happened. But there's a scripture that said in Revelation 12:11 about Satan has come down having great wrath, and it said they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb. It's not just the blood of the Lamb that breaks the enemy's power. It's what you do with that in your life and death to yourself and the life of Jesus. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, and they loved not their life unto the death. So this is Stewie's testimony. When I stand up here with Stewie, I'm reminded of that picture that Bobby's got with Bobby Orr, who's the guy from Blindside, Michael Orr. Bobby Woodward and Michael Orr, at Disney World, and just accidentally in a divine appointment get to meet and talk. And Bobby's got this picture with Michael, and it looks like Michael has to stoop down to get into the camera with. And just looking at that picture, I just know God spoke to my heart and said, do you know how low I had to stoop down to get you in the same picture with me? And just being in the same picture together with him is an awesome thing. Being part of what he's doing in a world that is just jacked up and messed up so bad. Who needs the Lord so bad. So I'm going to let him share his word the way he shares his word. Y'all, he's a visiting evangelist today. How about that?
Thank you, Pastor.
It's just right for me, but it's a little low down for me.
I'll make it work. I will tell you, I am in a bit of a predicament because I like to pace whenever I talk, and I might fall. So just bear with me there. Well, the Lord's been really speaking to me for especially like the past 4 weeks or so, and He's just been doing some wonderful work in me. So I want to kind of share kind of my testimony, my history, where I came from, how I am here today, and then I believe the Lord has given me a message that He started it with me, but He also wants me to spread it for everyone. A little bit of my history. I made some bullet points too, so that I'd stay on topic because I do like to talk a lot. So, a little bit of my history is my whole youth I grew up in church. I was in church until about the time I was 14 or so. My family, for reasons that I don't know, they had a falling out with the church that we were attending. It turned my mother and my father completely away from faith, from religion, and from church. Well, me, I was 14, 15 years old. I didn't have my worldly father that was holding me accountable for my life with God. And I quit seeing that love and that faith that my father had for our Heavenly Father, and it made a huge impact on me. By the time I was 15, I just had hate. I had anger, so much anger, and on the inside. On the outside, people, y'all know me, whenever I was around that age, I was still that happy-go-lucky kid whenever I was around people, And I just had hate, and the one, I did my adolescent partying, nothing crazy there, but the one thing that I could always find kind of security and kind of a way to channel that hate and anger was fighting. I fought. It didn't matter who it was, what it was about. I would verbally and physically fight. Didn't matter. I did not care who I hurt, emotionally or physically. I didn't care what the situation was. I wouldn't care if it was even, I knew I was going to lose a physical fight. I didn't care. It was a way for me to get rid of some of that anger and some of that hate. And now, whenever I turned 18, I calmed down because I realized I could go to big boy jail then. And then also, that's whenever I had my first child, Chloe. But I still had that anger and that hate on the inside, and it hurt me more than it was hurting other people at this point. It wasn't until 2013 the Lord put one of the biggest blessings in my life, and that was the year that I met my wife. we were both broken when we started dating. We were both broken. We were still going through our divorces. But seeing her faith, her love for the Lord, for people, and, I mean, she is literally the most selfless person I know. I mean, there's not many people in this world that can put up with me. I'll tell you that right now. She does a pretty good job of it. Plus, we have 7 kids, so that's not an easy task in itself at all either. But then the Lord started working on me, and, you know, that's whenever I started attending church full time. I mean, there would be times that I would come and visit, and, you know, before me and her were together, and it was just almost like, I can't really explain what it was like, but it was like I was almost just trying to save a little face with the community, the people I cared about. I've cared about Pastor David since I've met him, Bobby. You know, I met them probably back in 2005, 2006, and, you know, I've always cared about them. So, you know, I'd come in maybe 2 or 3 times a year, you know, save a little face. But then, after God started working on me, you know, I rededicated myself to the Lord. I, you know, found a new love for the Lord, and, you know, everything was good. In my opinion, everything was good. But I had become content and complacent with my relationship with the Lord. I was at that point where I was like, well, I know I love God. I know God loves me. We're good. We're good. That's as far as I go. And I've always known that God's kind of had a bigger plan than me, for me. And I missed several opportunities over the past 4 years, you know, after the Lord changed me. I missed opportunities, you know, I'd see someone that I knew, someone that knew me, knew my past, and I would see an opportunity to pray for him. And I'd say, no, I'm not going to do that. Someone that's better than me is going to come pray for this person, if the Lord is wanting that person to be prayed for. And, you know, that was just a consistent thing, and I would just make up excuses. And y'all can ask my wife. I'm the best person at making up excuses about anything. But about 3 or 4 weeks ago, something amazing happened, and it sparked a desire in my heart. I was at a football game, one of the middle school football games, and this young man that I've known, we're buddies, I've known for 3 or 4 years or so. He came up, just the normal chit chat, talking to me, asking me how I was doing. Saw my leg, asked me, you know, what was going on with that, and right there in front of everybody, he said, "Man, can I pray for you?" I said, "Yeah, dude, you know, go right ahead. You can pray for me." And this young man he had some fire in him. He was a prayer warrior, and, you know, he said his prayer, and it was awesome, and he got done, and, you know, I talked to him, and I was like, man, it's awesome to see someone your age. You know, this guy's like 6, 7 years younger than me. So it's awesome to see someone your age that has that kind of fire for the Lord. And he goes, "Man, I didn't even know you were a Christian." And that was a gut shot right there. I was like, wow, I've known you for almost 4 years, and you didn't even know that I was a Christian. You didn't know that I believed and I loved the Lord. And, you know, then that's whenever I was like, all right, God, I'm sorry. What do I need to do? And I was praying. I was just kept praying, I came home and I shared that incident with Felicia, and I was just like, you know, something's happening, something's going on. Kept praying, and then, you know, it kind of hit me. And it was like, everyone should see my fire. Everyone should see that I love the Lord. My wife should know that her husband is a God-fearing and loving man. My children should never have to question if their father loves Jesus. And then the church. You know, you're my second family. Y'all should know that I have that fire on the inside. And especially the community. All the people I used to run with, all the people I still hang out with at work, everything. They should know that I love the Lord and that I have that fire. Well, through the praying and everything, I actually lost my Bible. I told Pastor that, and he said, "That's never good." But we lost it whenever we were moving. We lost it. I found my wife's, but then the next morning I woke up and I went to Walmart and bought me a new Bible. Just kind of flipping through it, and the Lord really put this verse in my heart, and so I wanted to share that verse real quick. But it's Matthew 5:16. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. And I was like, okay, I hear you, Lord. All right, so I know this is from you. And so, that's kind of how he's been working on me. But I think this applies to more than just me. I think this applies for churches in general, not just this church, but this church included, but other churches in general, and then just Christians and believers, like me, like I said, I'm the worst excuse maker, but we as Christians have got to stop making excuses for not testifying, for not praying for people, for not spreading the word of the Lord. And, and we have to quit being convenient with our prayers. I mean, we'll come in this house, or we'll come in, settings with like-minded people, and we will be some awesome prayer warriors. But then we go out there, and it has to be a convenient occasion before we're strong prayer warriors. And, whenever I was speaking with Pastor, he preached a while back on being content with worldly things. And that is good, but we should never be content in our relationship with the Lord. You can't ever get to a point where you say, okay, God, that's all I need to know. We're good. We're good. No, we have to just keep trying to find that fire. Keep trying to build that relationship with the Lord. Keep trying to bring others to be warriors with us for the Lord, because I can tell you right now, the other side is they're building an army. We have to be able to build an army as well. And that's the only way that's going to happen is not by only spreading that word inside the church. We have to do that on the outside. And really the last thing that I really have to say is, this is one thing that, I feel like God put in my heart, is he says that he has given us the tools. He's given us the matches. He's given us the gasoline. But it's our duty to use it, to spread the fire, to spread the love, and to spread the word. That's really all I have to say.
Let me just share this Thursday morning. Thursday morning we do a pastor's fellowship meeting at 7 o'clock on Thursday morning, and there was 8 of us Thursday morning got together, and we spent a couple of hours together at just eating breakfast and sharing vision for the community and connecting. That fellow said a very wise thing: you can't trust who you don't know. And we got out at a normal time. I pick up a pastor friend of mine who doesn't drive, and we go, and for some reason he got another ride home, and I was freed up a little, and I came outside and was talking to a couple of the ministers just standing out front, and Pumpkin came up. Y'all know Pumpkin? Y'all know who I'm talking about, Ronnie Sharp Pumpkin? And we just started talking, and he started sharing some of his testimony, and actually he and I'll share maybe some of this later on, and a group of other people are connecting around a vision for this community that has to do with breaking the power, the curse of drugs on this community and what's happening. And I'm going to tell you, community does not change until the church changes. Community don't change until the church quits being a bunch of individuals and comes together around a purpose and a desire in God that He's called us to. The church never needs to come together about a problem. The church needs to come together in obedience to the Word of God. Okay? And then the problems are solved. And we just began to touch and share. And he shared some of his testimony and where he'd been. Actually, in the years that we did First Friday, Parents' Night Out, First Friday, we did that for like 9 years. This was before, it overlapped Hope a little bit, but this was before Hope came on and did what they did. And a lot of that's just about a place of getting the Word of God into the next generation in a safe place. And kids who hated school would come here and actually Debbie had a family that she met the lady at the store, and the mothers found out that we had canceled First Friday that month, and her kids were thrilled. She said, let me explain. We were going on vacation, and they didn't want to go on vacation because they're going to miss First Friday. And that says a pretty awesome thing, and we're having like 90 kids. Well, that was my first really contact of knowing Pumpkin. He brought his kids into that. And in his testimony, he shared, basically the sheriff said, you coming down, we're going to get you. And he lost his 7 kids to the system. And out of that, he came out of that world. And that's his testimony. I tell you, the testimony that Stewie cares greatly for this house is he has, when you have a kid that's excited today about getting a Bible for Christmas, you got something special. When that is their thrill over a generation of kids that love Jesus, that's an awesome thing. But part of his story, he said, my grandmother prayed for me, and when I would get mad, I'd go off and do drugs. She said, no more. When you get mad, we're going to sit down and pray and give it to God. And she stood with him and prayed for him, and God opened up a job with Mid-South Painting over here, and he's going on the road with them. First time out, first time trying to break this curse that is on his life. It's a whole lot easier to get in than it is to get out. And he said, started out my first trip, and I met the guy very early in the morning. I think his grandmother had brought him up there. Got everything packed, and he said, we started down the road, got 40, 50 miles, and I realized the one thing that I had left was my Bible. And he said, I called my grandmother and said, guess what I left? And she said, I know. I'm sitting here looking at it, but God will do something. He said, we got down in Mississippi, and I had to have a Coke bad, and I got the guy that's driving to pull over, and he said, I walked across a little 4-lane to a convenience store across the street, and he said, this guy nearly runs over me. He pulls in and gets out of the car, and he's thinking, I know what this means. It's going to be trouble. There's going to be a fight. And he said he got out and looked at me right in the eye, and he said, are you saved? He said, yeah, just got saved. And said he reached and handed me a Bible. He said, God told me to give you this. Now, God is building a foundation in people and things like that. That is just that's an awesome testimony. Let me tell you, I don't know where you think you are, but God knows where you are. Okay. When you don't know, God knows where you are. And God cares about your situation. Let me give you 2 scriptures. And I'm going to be, I promise I'm going to be short this morning, okay? Because my mama thinks I done already preached. Just about every Sunday we start out, I said, Mama, you preaching today? And she said, does he want me to whip him? And after it's over, she says, it was too long. Let me give you Judges chapter 15, just a couple of scriptures, and Genesis chapter 25. And just a word on connecting yourself to your calling, finding your place and your purpose in God, and releasing your potential, the potential of your own dreams and your own visions. Finding your place, connecting yourself to your calling, finding your place and purpose in life, and releasing the God-given potential that is in your dreams and in your destiny. Because that's a lot about what a walk with God is real. Sometimes, and the further you go and the more you try to do, the more real this gets. Sometimes it is right in the middle, in the midst of the struggle, in the midst of the crazy, chaotic confusion of life, that destiny is revealed. Did y'all know that? When you least think you got it figured out, right in the midst of the crazy, chaotic confusion, your destiny is brought to light. When Paul said, I have learned in whatsoever, watch that word, I have learned this, something I've learned. I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. I know both how to be abased, and I know how to be abound. He knows how to be abased. He knows how to live in abasement. And then he knows how to live in the abundance of God that came out of that, Bobby. Okay? He knows how to be abased. He knows how to be full, and he knows how to be hungry. And he said, everywhere in all things I am instructed. And you got these words, I know, I have learned. You've got a life lesson. And basically he said, all of school is a life for me. All of school is a class that I go through. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed. And out of that, he says, now I can do all things through Christ who is my strength. And sometimes His strength is made perfect in our life through our weakness. Sometimes and Paul said that was real for him. Sometimes His strength comes when we don't know what to do. And Paul speaks of all of life as a school. Paul is, if you study and read about Paul, who's my favorite character outside of Jesus in the Bible, Paul was a highly educated man. Tradition says Paul spoke 7 languages. It's amazing when they would lock him up and they think they'd lock him up an idiot and he knows more than all of them put together. Okay? Paul was an extremely educated man, but he laid that aside and laid everything aside, and he learned life through the book of life. He learned life through 5 times I received 39 stripes. 3 times I was beaten with rods, stoned and left for dead. 3 times I learned Jesus has got this. And he learned his walk with God. And you can go to school, the school of life, all your life and never learn your lessons, and you keep going through the same class. Because God is not into no child left behind. He's into spiritual promotion and growth. So, as the saying goes, you getting held back. I'm going to tell you, held back is not a bad thing. Okay? So, let me give you this week's, the Hole in Wall Facebook highlight of the week. I like to find my favorite one every week, okay? This one just tops them all this week, okay? This is my Hole in Wall highlight. It's from the Lewis County Chamber of Commerce. And I don't know why they post what they post. But you will see stuff on the Lewis County Chamber of Commerce site that's from a Lewis County in another state. Maybe that's where it came from. But this is about a vacation location, okay? It's called Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. That's actually the name of the article. In the Alleghenian Mountains and River area, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Everybody feel like you've been there? And it's got this picture of the place. And I don't know how many have ever seen Western State Mental Institution in Bolivar, Tennessee, but it makes that look like a Sunday school class. Okay? It's got the picture of the building. It looks like an old castle. It's 5 or 6 stories high. And I pulled this thing up. The largest hand-cut masonry building in North America. The largest in the world, second only to the Kremlin. Okay? Was originally designed for 250 souls. Reached its peak. Now we're talking about a lunatic asylum. In the 1950s, reached its peak with 2,400 patients. You ever feel like you were designed for 250 and you're carrying 2,400? There's an overload. And it opened in 1864 and it closed in 1994 because of overcrowded conditions and changes in the way that folks with issues like that were taken care of, and because the building was deteriorating. But today it is a tourist spot. Every day is a great day to tour TALA. That's their initial, okay? Tours it's open today at 11:30, from 11:30 to 6 o'clock today. And for $10, you can take the tour and walk those halls of that building, of the lunatic asylum. I thought we'd just load up a bunch on Tanya's bus. And I know y'all, we would go with a bus full and come back with less than a half a bus. Okay. So some would get to, but I'm thinking, or you could just stay here and walk a day with us. If you don't believe there's a lunatic asylum at our house, be there Sunday morning when Debbie's trying to get us all ready and out of the house and we're rushed. And Mama walks like Tim Connor's little man. Y'all remember? She is, come on, my God, come on, Mama, come on, come on. It's equal to getting 7 kids. I see you, Felicia. My daughter, who has 7, said, every time we walk through those doors, you need to thank God for a small miracle. And when life don't move like you want it to, we create our own crazy, okay? Come on over to our house. And folks, when life gets that way, it is in the struggle and the chaos, the crazy confusion of life that destiny is so often revealed and released, okay? When you don't know any answer but Him. I've told this about the little girl down in Mississippi, and she's in her first or second grade class or whatever, and the whole class has got to write a paper about Mississippi and about Jackson, Mississippi. And she writes on her paper, Jackson. Jackson is in Mississippi. I do not know if Jackson is in North Mississippi or in South Mississippi. I only know that Jackson's in Mississippi. It takes all my knowing to know that Jackson's in Mississippi. Did you ever feel like it takes all my knowing just to figure out where I am? I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what's going on. It takes everything in me to try to figure out what's going on. The father who is babysitting his 6-year-old, extremely hyperactive 6-year-old son is about to run him up the wall. And the little boy said, Daddy, it seemed like to me I'm just going round and round and round and round and round and round in circles. And he said, hush, boy, I'll nail your other shoe to the floor. And these cycles and these circles of life, when Chad's gone, I guess, and I can't see, Chad's drumming at a singing this afternoon. That's using the gift that God's given him, and he had to sneak out. But when Chad was, I guess, 14 or 15 years old, he spent the night with a friend of his from school. And he came home and said, called the boy's name and said his brother's got a plaque on the wall that said Quinco Decline of the Year. Well, Quinco's like Centerstone, okay? It's where you go for issues and problems. And this dude, I'm thinking, we could have won that. If they don't know us, we could have won that Decline of the Year for this thing. Debbie and I checked into our room in, I don't know what they would call the town. It was at Blue Bank Resort at Reelfoot Lake. And we checked into the room, and when we checked into the room, on the bedside table, there's a little plaque that said, $100 fine for cleaning fish in room. And I thought, I know I'm at the right place. I'm going to fit right here real well, okay? Judges 15. We're just going to read a couple of verses and talk about the way confusion and chaos is released, okay? Very familiar story. Judges 15, picking it up in verse 4. And Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and he took firebrands or torches, and he turned these 300 foxes tail to tail and put the torch between the midst of the two of them. And when he had set the brands on fire, the torches on fire, he let them, the foxes, go into the standing corn of the Philistines and burn up both the shocks, also the standing corn with the vineyards and the olives thereof. He destroyed all the enemy's fields. Samson is not going to do well with the people from Petah. Okay? Because in the chapter before, he's on the road and he meets a young lion, and the lion roars against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came up on him mightily. He powered up, snatched up the lion, and ripped him apart with his bare hands. And I think he's probably thinking, what are you doing, dude? Have you lost your mind? That's not a reasonable thing to do. And here he catches 300 foxes, ties them tail to tail, sets their tail on fire, and turns them loose in the standing corn in the enemy's field. And then later on in this chapter, he finds the jawbone of a donkey and picks it up and slays 1,000 men with the jawbone of a donkey. Maybe the donkey died in the fire that he loosed in the enemy's fields. I don't know. But the man is not reasonable or logical. He's into something beyond us. What I see in these two verses is what I call the power of the pull. The restraint, resistance training of being held back. 300 foxes means there's 150 pair of two. They're tied tail to tail with a torch between their tail, and then released in the enemy's field. Life and ministry seldom run along well-planned, nice, neat, straight, orderly lines. Did you know that? It happens differently. He caught them. He tied them to, actually some translations will say jackals instead of foxes, which is probably a better translation because they packed and that would have been easier to catch a bunch of them. He caught them. He tied them to each other, tied 2 to 2, set them on fire and released them in the enemy's field. So Jesus calls unto him his 12 apostles whom he had chosen. And he gives them power. He fires them up. And sends them out 2 by 2 in pairs of 2. Because 1 shall chase 1,000 and 2 shall chase 10,000. Connecting to someone else is the way you multiply what you have. He sends them out 2 by 2 because of that. In basically to the enemy's fields and said, as you go preach, say the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the leper, cast out the devils, raise the dead. Freely you have received, freely give. And then he said an interesting, I am sending you forth as sheep among wolves. So you need to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, and you beware of men. So we've got these pairs of 2 by 2, and you got to look at these 12. When he sent the 12 out, he sent them out in 6 pairs of 2. When he sent the 70 out, he sent them 2 by 2. And they double up in ministry. And we got these teams that he's putting together, and you got to start these teams with men like James and John, brothers, whom Jesus called the sons of thunder. If you got a job you want done, and you've got 2 men among the group that are sons of thunder, do not group them together. Do not put those 2 together. There's going to be trouble. So you got James and John, the sons of thunder, and you got Judas, who Jesus said was a devil. He didn't say he had a devil. He said he was a devil. Okay? And then you got Thomas, doubting Thomas, who is called Didymus, which means Thomas the twin, who evidently had an identity crisis. And then you got Simon Peter. The day that you are sent out on your team and you are paired with Simon Peter is a good day to call in sick. Okay? And Jesus grouped these guys together. And among this group of 12 that are supposed to change the world with their ministry, and Jesus sending them out with fire and a power and authority in groups of 2, among them there is a continual bickering and fighting about who's going to be first. Who's going to get first place? Who's going to be lead? See, you got 2 foxes tied together and set on fire and running. It is constantly being determined who is pulling who, because they ain't no direction into thing. And the one trying to lead feels like he's being held back. And these guys are jockeying for position in first place. And so James and John say, grant unto us that we may set the one on your right hand, the power side, and the other on your left hand when you enter into your kingdom. We're looking for position in Jesus. And the rest of them can just stand up if they want to, just so we get set close. And you got these guys to put together, and it is in their walking together and their rub against each other that they develop their spiritual potential. And folks, an ability to walk with God, the ability to walk together and to run, takes the wisdom and the Spirit of God. I think I've shared this, but in the early 2000s, right after we came here, we took a man from here all the way to Mobile, Alabama, to get him in a very successful drug rehab program because his whole world was about to crash. And we carried him there, and that's a tough program. It's Teen Challenge. Pray for Teen Challenge. They have a place in Savannah. They're building 39 new beds for that place right now. They're packed out and full. They carry the highest success rate in the nation, okay, for people who go through their program. But we carried him to Mobile, Alabama, got him checked into this program. And we went on down to Pensacola, and he beat us home. Okay? That's happened a bunch of times. Okay? He wasn't through, and he's still not. Last I heard of him, there was an all-points bulletin in Maury County. They're looking for him everywhere. And he will be institutionalized most of his life because of choices he made. He didn't start out wanting to be that way. But while we're there, we went on down to Pensacola, and while we're in Pensacola, we wound up with just something to do. We got a day, and we wound up going to the Naval Air Station there at the first air show I'd ever been to. And the first little plane that did the first little stun, I thought he was dead. I thought this is over, because he just reached up and high as he could go and just stalled it out and fell out in the front. I'm thinking, well, dude's crashing and we're all going home. He didn't. And they had everything in the world to say. They had the top military jets in the nation that could pull straight up and just like a rocket disappear out of sight. They had a dude to take a little old plane and fly it straight and just wave like waving a hand in front of the crowd. They had everything. They had a plane they called Fat Albert, which is bigger than this building. They could jump straight off the ground and just an air. But the whole point of the thing is this was the Blue Angels homecoming air show. And I'm thinking, they have done everything that can be done. What are the Blue Angels going to do? They do it together. In precision, with so much speed, that if anybody messes up, somebody's going to die. And actually, the number 3 plane was sitting there because the number 3 pilot had crashed out and died that week. And basically, the Lord is saying, the world's seen enough Rambos. They've seen enough guys that can do it by themselves. They're looking for a people that can go out and walk together and work together and challenge and change their world. So there's a story in these verses that we're reading. And I think every one of those 300 foxes that's tied tail to tail with something else that's on fire feel like they're being held back, and the resistance. And actually, I could run faster if I wasn't tied. I know, but you can't do ministry at that speed. And it has to do with understanding our connectedness. It is this being held back by what God connects us to that strengthens us. Psalm 127 said, children are an heritage of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is his reward. And then it said, as arrows in the hands of a mighty man, so are the children of our youth. You understand that the arrow is powerless until it's held back. That you just hold it there, don't pull it back, you didn't let it go, it'll just fall to the ground. And it's looking for men of wisdom, mighty men who know to hold them back, but also know how to release them. Hold them, point them, aim them, and release them. Because 150 pairs tied together can be multiplied and do more than 300 individuals running the field by themselves. I think if he'd set 300 on fire and turned them loose, they would have went through the fields in a straight line running, but they probably wouldn't have done near the damage to the enemy that... I've told this is a very hot summer day and the old farmer's out working in the cornfield, and he has the whole field full of kids that are working, chopping corn in a hot day, and the guy pulls up in a nice shiny car. It's a chemical salesman. He said, good news for you, sir. I can sell you some chemicals to spray on that corn, and those kids won't have to chop corn. He said, bad news for you, sir. I ain't raising corn. I'm raising kids. And in these ministries that stretch us, God is not just doing ministry. He's raising up ministers. When God called Moses to build that tabernacle, he ain't building a tabernacle. He's building a people that can walk in obedience to leadership and do something and work together. He gave that dream and that design of everything he wanted in that house to one man. And then he put the desire and the ability into the heart of all the people. And all God had to do was say tabernacle. And there'd have been a tabernacle with his word. But he's building the people, and if he can walk in obedience to them, they can do awesome things. See, the thing that I love about the outreaches that we're doing, like the Fall Festival coming up and about Hope for the Holidays, I don't know if y'all understand what has to happen there, but God has to show up. When Tanya starts out with Hope for the Holidays and believing for $16,000 with an account of zero, and basically that's where this church stays, with an account of zero, okay? And if we had $1 million, I hope we would be broke within a month, because it's somewhere that is needed. But the community and people that we are very different from and don't have to come together, be tied together and connect and make a difference. When we do, those, I guess the three major ones are the Fall Festival, Hope for the Holidays. Of course, hope happens every week. And God not just ministering to kids, He's building ministers and ministries. And extravaganza. I told Debbie the power. Debbie put the bulletin out, and she always has me to proofread it, but I went to bed before she got through last night, and she put the bulletin out. And she said from 6:30 to 8. And I said, last year, wasn't that from 6 to 8:30? So 2.5 hours instead of an hour and a half, okay? And she changed it around. But the power of that event has very little to do with what happens in that 2.5 hours. That is a safe place on a dangerous night. But the power is all of the businesses and all of the people of the community that come together, and all of the churches and all that pour themselves into a vision and learn to walk and work together. And we're strengthened every time. And I have a hard time walking with folks like my good buddy Sam, okay? Because I aggravate him and it makes him mad and he wants to kill me. And he's the chief of police. I've shared this. I love it because he is at Walmart and I see him and I know from way off, I know he is stressed, okay? He's trying to go fast. He's trying to get checked out, and I know he's behind, and he's got a lot on it and a lot to do, and he's there trying to get, so I just roll up behind him and bump his buggy as hard as I can. And he looked around at me, and there's fire in his eyes. The look said, I will kill you. And he said, don't make me embarrass you in front of all these people. But we pay a price to know each other and get to know each other and pull together and walk together. I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, a night meeting with bankers, businessmen, former drug addicts, and pastors. Ain't that a good combination of working together? I'm thinking maybe this group coming together could say something and learn something and do something. I'm excited about that that connectedness, okay? And we're meeting again on the 9th of this month, same group meeting again, businessmen, bankers, pastors, and former drug addicts, with a vision to try to bring a dream center to Hohenwald, Tennessee. I don't know if y'all know about the Dream Center, but that's an awesome ministry. Born in L.A. in a building with 200 and something ministers, and to think ministries under one roof going out. What they know, if you want the street kids of L.A., you do not go out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You go out at 2 o'clock in the morning. And the connectedness of all those ministries. And I got to looking at all that's happening in this community. God doing some awesome things. The food bank does an awesome work. Kevin Baker up here at Sweetwater House of Prayer, they do an awesome work. They give away thousands of pounds of food every week. And y'all know some about the birth of that vision. Hope's doing an awesome work. There's things happening all over this community, but the connectedness. I sat and talked to a man yesterday whose heart just burns for the vision of the shelter and what they do for abused women. Telling me about that program. And somehow, folk, if we ever get connected, I think awesome things are going to happen. Go back to Genesis 25, and we're going to wind this up quickly, okay? I'm going to get you out of here before 12 today. Y'all going to beat the Baptist to the cafeteria today. I should have called my buddy, Brother Jerry McDonald, and told him, I'm going to preach short, you preach long. Genesis 25, and about the power that's in the struggle. And we'll pick it up down in verse 21. Giving birth to spiritual things. The greater the potential and the destiny you carry, the greater the struggle will be for you to bring that forth. Okay. Isaac entreated or prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him, heard his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. And the children struggled together within her, like the foxes. And she said, if it be so, if this is of God, why am I thus? Why am I going through this? And she inquired of the Lord, and the Lord answered her and said unto her, 2 nations are in your womb. Every pregnant mother has felt that at some time in her pregnancy. Okay? 2 nations, you are carrying potential and birth. 2 nations are in your womb. 2 manner of people shall be separated from your bowels, and the one shall be the stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. I'm reversing the order here. Big brother's going to serve little brother. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out all over like a hairy garment, red, and they called his name Esau, which really means rough. And after him came out his brother, and he took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob, which means tripper or surplanter or con man. And Isaac was 60 years old when the boys were born, and the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field. And Jacob, daddy loved Esau. Let me finish it. Jacob was a plain man, and Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of the venison, and Rebekah loved Jacob. That is a recipe for disaster. That's favoritism among the children, and that is they're individuals, but they don't require that. There is this struggle toward pregnancy when you're going to birth something for God. First struggle is in her even conceiving to have birth. The second struggle is between these 2 twins, these 2 boys that struggle together and wrestle together in her womb before they're born. And when she goes to God and asks why, basically he said, because of the awesomeness of the potential that you carry. Because this is not about 2 babies, this is about 2 nations. The potential in a child. 2 nations. 2 different kind, 2 manner of people. One stronger, one weaker. And the elder will serve the younger. The stronger will serve the weaker. And that's the reason for your struggle. So Jesus said, out of the heart of man, out of your heart and my heart, proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornication, thefts, false witness, and blasphemy. All those things can come flowing out of the heart of man. That's where they come from. The enemy wants them in this world. He seeds them into the heart of man, and out of the heart of man flow all of these issues. Jesus said to certain Jews who believed in him, you are of your father the devil, and you're going to do whatever he wants done. You're not free to do different. But the same Jesus who said out of the heart of man proceed evil thoughts, murders, fornications, adulteries, thefts, false witness, and blasphemy, said to a group, if a man thirst and come unto me and drink, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. What that means is you carry 2 nations within your life-giving capacity. You can give birth to either. And the struggle between those 2 is so real. The flesh, your flesh, wars against your spirit. Your fleshly potential wars against your spiritual potential and your spirit against the flesh. And these two are contrary the one to the other, so you can't do the things you want. In life and ministry, there is always this struggle happening between one, to conceive and bring forth the things of God, and two, between conception and delivery. Between what you receive of God, there is this battle going on. And the children struggling together. And at birth, we read the verse, at birth, Esau, older brother, came out first, and Jacob came out holding his head, still struggling for first place. Jockeying for position. And his name became Jacob, and he was labeled his whole life Jacob, con man, trickster, because of one thing that happened. I worked with a young man whose name was Norman, but everybody called him Toe, because he sucked his toe instead of his thumb when he was a baby. And it stuck with him his whole life. They struggled in the womb, they struggled at birth, and immediately following from verse 28 and following 29, the next rest of this chapter, Jacob cons Esau out of his birthright. He speaks to a temporal need of hunger in his life, and he sells his birthright for a bowl of soup. That's why God said, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. Because he will sell his eternal potential for momentary pleasures. And Jacob, then a couple of chapters later, cons his daddy out of his brother's blessing. So he's got the birthright and he's got the blessing, and he gets it honest. He cons Laman, his uncle. He thinks he's conning him, and Laman's conning him, and they're back and forth in this jive con game between who's going to con. He cons Laban out of all of his flocks and herds, and Laman is a con man himself. Remember the thing with Rachel and Leah? He switched sisters on him and got him to work another 7 years. Until you read over in chapter 32, and we won't go there. But he has a dream or a vision. In his dream and his vision, Jacob wrestles with the Lord. Actually, if you read the whole story, it says he wrestled with a man. When he wrestled with the man, he said, in this struggling, I have seen God face to face. Hosea said he wrestled with the angel, and he had power over the angel. And in this wrestling and in this struggling of his destiny and identity, he wrestled with God, wrestled with a man. And he is at least 60 years old. A man 60 years old who's been Jacob all these years. And for the first time in the struggle and the wrestling, he hears his true name, which is Israel. Which is the first time that we hear that name Israel in all the Bible, in all of God. Do y'all understand that that nation is still fighting today? That they are in constant war because of the destiny that's on them? Like I've told you, peace in the Middle East, those two do not belong in the same sentence. It never has been, it never will be till Jesus comes back. Because of spiritual potential and the war that surrounds, the struggle that surrounds your spiritual capacity. Well, this one man who is wrestled, struggled in the womb, born, taking his brother by the heel, conned his brother out of his birthright, conned his father out of his brother's blessing that belonged to the older brother, conned Laban out of all his flocks and herd, now is wrestling, and I think he's the man that he's wrestling with is himself. He wrestled with the man in the struggle. He's found God. I don't care what your struggle is. If you find God in the middle of it, it's a good struggle. And the word Israel literally means prince with God or power with God. Because it said, you have prevailed and you have power both with God and man. And the angel touched the hollow of his thigh, and he walked with a limp from then on. And Bishop Jake has got a message that never trust a man without a limp. Never trust a man that God has not touched and broken. Let me tell you what I'm saying in all of this. Spiritual potential in your life and what happens with your life, in your family, with your children. Stewie said an awesome thing. My kids need to see my passion. Bill Wilson, Metro Sidewalk Sunday School, said, if people can't see your passion, you don't have one. What is it that people that see you notice first about you? He brought that verse, let your light so shine that men may see your good works. See, I understand about you. Don't let the left hand know what the right hand does, okay? That's good. But the thing there is not secrecy. It's motive. It's why you do what you do. If you do it to be seen of men, if you do it for show, so they'll see you. But you do it in a way that men see your good works and they glorify your Father which is in heaven. And that births life, and that births the kingdom of God and ministry. This man Jacob, Israel, there is an Israel within every child of God. I was sharing with someone the other day the verse I preached on so many times in this house. There's a verse in Job 14:1 that said, man that is born of woman is a few days and full of trouble. Well, we got anybody in this house that wasn't born of woman? Okay? So that's a broad stroke. It brings everybody. Man that is born of woman is a few days and full of trouble. But Matthew 11:11, Jesus said, of them that are born of women, there's never risen a greater than John the Baptist. It's an awesome statement. Of all the men of God through this Bible, of all the Abrahams, Isaacs, and Jacobs, Noahs, and the Moses, and the Ezekiels, and the Daniels, and all of them, there's never risen a greater, Jesus said that, than John the Baptist. Notwithstanding, he that is least in the kingdom of God is greater than he. That's an awesome word on spiritual potential, folk. There is a Israel inside of every one of us Jacobs. And he's worth fighting for. It's worth fighting for the spiritual potential of the next generation. Jacob must keep on dreaming because his dream did not start with him and his dream does not end with him. He is Jacob because of Abraham, Isaac, and then Jacob. He is Jacob because of the promise and the covenant God had with a man named Abraham. And if you be Christ, if you belong to Christ, you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise that God made to Abraham. And so he has got to keep dreaming because he's got to give birth to a dream child called Joseph, who's going to connect his dreams with a pagan king named Pharaoh and rule a nation to the glory of God. Rule a pagan nation. Joseph was not a preacher. He was a dreamer and a politician. He saved a nation by raising taxes. That is not going to fly well, okay? He raised the national debt increase of 7 years of abundance. He took a top abundance off of that and saved it for years of famine. And Joseph is a dreamer. But he can't dream if his daddy loses his dream. Does that make sense to y'all? Let me just close this thing down with this. Being born of God, being born again, is a whole lot more than you just got your ticket punched and you're going to heaven someday. Okay? Being born of God awakens your spiritual child and your spiritual potential. That's why John said, to as many as received him, Jesus, to them gave he power to become a freedom, a license to become the sons of God. Let me just help and say the sons and the daughters of the living God. You have potential. That's the struggle, the power to become, the freedom from everything you were into what God has called, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of man. Break all that. I don't care who your daddy was. Which were born to as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God. Which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but born of God. Awesome potential in that fact. That's why it said, you are of God, little children, and have overcome them, because greater is he that's in you than he that's in the world. I like to just say that, than he that's in your world. And no matter what the song says, in Jesus, you are not just a common man driving a common van and your dog ain't got no pedigree. In Jesus, you got a pedigree. You got a destiny in God. Peter said in the midst of his vision, God has shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean. That's a good word right there. And you are a son or a daughter of the living God with a potential and a destiny in God. And I know that the restraint and the holdback is real, but there's strength in that. And there's a release. And as arrows in the hands of a mighty man, I know you being head back, but if you get pointed the right way and get yourself in the right place, you will be released in a way. You will be released into the enemy's field with the fire of God. That may be where you work. That may be in your home. They may be in a ministry in the church house. And I'll close it with this. This is where we were 2 weeks ago. Having therefore these promises, dearly beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all filthiness of the flesh and of the spirit, perfecting holiness in the fear of God. What promises? God has said, I, God, will dwell in them, and I will walk in them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Wherefore come out from among them, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you, and I will be a father to you, and you'll be my sons and daughters, saith the Almighty. That's a big word right there, folks. And in the battle, I'm talking on different levels because different people are different places in understanding ministry, okay? But I told a young man that we've got great confidence in what God's doing in that young man's life with DT. I said, you need to pay attention to who God's put you with. You're working with Bruce Hussey and you're living with George Scarborough. Two of the most godly men on the face of this earth. God's got great things for your life, son. You are not where you are by accident. You need to pay attention to who God put you with. See, I think that this meeting that I'm talking about I'm thinking, how in the world did I get here? Another pastor called and invited me. I guess is how I got there. But I'm sitting there with a few pastors and some bankers and some businessmen and some former drug addicts. And I'm seeing a connectedness. Can you just go and run with a vision? No. You come together. And as God ties you together, He's going to tie some folk together, set them on fire, and turn them loose in the enemy's field. I believe that. In your home. In your family situation. In what you're... The believing wife is not to leave the unbelieving husband. The believing husband is not to leave the unbelieving wife. Because the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the believing wife. And the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the believing husband. Else were your children unclean. But now they are holy. And that one sanctifying effect of a child of God in the situation. God may connect you to somebody that is not that spiritual. Or that saved, okay? We went to a manpower conference. No, it wasn't a manpower conference. It was a women's conference. We went to a conference in 2005 in Tampa, Florida, with Paula White, 2005 Alive. And Randy White, they had a huge auditorium. It was in the Sun Dome where the Sun Devils, I think we had church where the Sun Devils play basketball, okay? We were in that auditorium and packed full of people and bringing that all together. So I go to meetings like that and I hear folks sitting and complaining about how it's done. If you ain't never done nothing like that, hush. You got no idea what. But Randy White got up and said, if you're here and you need assistance and you need help, we got ushers all around. And he said, you are free to complain if you need to complain. But you need to do it nicely because most of our folk ain't been saved that long. I'm going to tell you, it will do you good to be connected with some folks that ain't been saved that long or ain't saved. Now, I want you to stand. I want to pray over this word and over your life. I'm glad you're in the house today. See, I believe